Hey everyone, welcome back to the hardware news recap for the week. In this one, we'll be talking about a lot of news, including ASRock selling NFTs of its own logo for $250 each. That's right, ASRock has made time in its busy schedule of blacklisting media outlets for producing coverage of its motherboards to create NFTs. Additionally, Intel DG2 potential GPU memory configurations have leaked, so going up to 16 gigabytes capacity on the highest end of the SKUs that we know of so far, and as low as 4 gigabytes. Kingpin has shown off some images of a custom RTX. Well, technically, the card doesn't say what model it is. It's probably a 3090 Ti, but there's a new Kingpin card on the horizon that's been shown. EVGA is introducing a carbon fiber chassis for its limited edition PC. The computer will be over $5,000 for sure, easily with the components in it. Also, be talking about the Valve Steam Deck. We have one. We'll have a review of it for the hardware, at least, on the channel pretty soon. More on that later, and some more. Before that, this video is brought to you by Thermal Grizzly. Thermal Grizzly's Hydronaut and Cryonaut thermal pastes are high-performing thermal interfaces for use on CPUs and GPUs. You can bring an old card back to peak performance by repasting it and doing preventative maintenance, and Thermal Grizzly's Hydronaut is ideal for water cooling and air cooling for new and old cards alike. Cryonaut paste is one of the top performing pastes for extreme overclocking with CPUs and GPUs and has been used in several world record scoring machines. Learn more at the link in the description below. So first up, just a quick update. We have a new channel. We have a secondary channel where we're going to be putting a lot of additional content, like some of the moving videos where Andrew is following different people on the team throughout the space as we set up new testing locations. We study machines for new testing methodologies. We make plans. All of that type of stuff is going up on the secondary channel. So it gives you more of a look at the personality and people behind the content that the team's producing. You'll get to see the whole team as we work on setting up these testing areas and building out the new office, all that stuff. It's basically content that is still really interesting. I think it's fun, but for YouTube algorithm reasons, it makes more sense to split it off as a secondary channel. So that's linked below. Make sure you subscribe to it if you want to check out some of the earliest videos. We're also going to have clips we're putting there, so funny moments from streams, some of the better super chats where people have submitted a question in old streams and we've answered it and we think it's worth publishing as something separate to draw attention to, if it's a common question, for example. So that kind of stuff's going over there too. But it's not just going to be clips. We're going to have a lot of new content that won't be on the main channel, just again for YouTube reasons. I'm personally really looking forward to that channel because there's a lot of stuff we film that never makes it into videos here just because we have certain sort of length targets or content targets we want to hit for this channel to make sure it's meeting everyone's expectations. But there's still stuff that's fun or interesting, like when we're trying to learn new testing machines or methodologies that for the content on this channel, we sort of distill it all down into a really focused script and deliver exactly the end result, explain the end result to you all. But the process of getting to that end result is interesting to people who are more interested in the technical side of things, or you might think the stuff we do is particularly cool or fun and want to see the behind the scenes. So that's where that is. We still have the Patreon behind the scenes stuff too, of course. This is going to be separate from that though, or in addition to that. And some of that Patreon stuff might eventually go on that channel over time anyways. So check that out and make sure you subscribe so you can get that content. That is linked in the description below. And one final note here too, while we're on the topic, GN Mod Mats, I was just taking a look at inventory. We've done awesome this time where we were able to order enough, finally, to be able to hold over for a couple months with supply. It's taken us years to get to this point. It's expensive to do these orders, so I have to have the money to order it, obviously. But we are running low, and we're probably going to run out of the Volt mod mats before we get the next shipment in. So if you want one of the 4x2 PC building work surfaces that we do all of our teardowns on, you can go to store.gamersnexus.net to grab one. They're in stock and shipping now. For now, they are anti-static work surfaces. A lot of the surfaces we've seen over the years that claim to be anti-static are actually just mouse pads that they then put an ESD grounding strap button on. That doesn't do anything. So anyway, ours is actually anti-static, and we have a whole video explaining the process and the design and engineering of it. But let's move on to the next news item. So ASRock, scamming users with NFTs. When ASRock isn't busy blacklisting GamersNexus or Hub for producing reviews of its motherboards, and then continuing to blacklist us, even when there's a board they make we think is good, because that's a good business model, it is working on the next get-rich-quick scheme. And this one is NFTs. ASRock is introducing NFTs that its new press release say allow it to, quote, join the metaverse. That's right. If you've ever needed an example of disgusting, oddly future corporate things that companies say, this would probably be on that list. ASRock will be selling 100 special NFTs that are small video clips of the ASRock logo. Of course, a lot of people deeply care about the Phantom Gaming logo and the Phantom Gaming brand that I had to look up the name of before filming this because I had forgotten that they will buy these things. The NFTs are being sold for 0.1 Ethereum each at the current pricing. That's about $250, $255 each, and it's basically a video file. Don't right-click it. The first 30 will be sold at that price. We're expecting ASRock will change the price after that. Probably they want to increase it after that. Hopefully they decrease it because no one buys them, but we'll see. ASRock says that the NFTs will fund a special account. We're assuming that's the ASRock bank account, but it also said something about having plans for funding creators or something. It was non-specific enough that it's basically ASRock's money, and they'll probably just pay their normal artist contractors with that money or something anyway. It's bullshit. Let's move on. Intel DG2 GPU memory configurations potentially leaked, if this is a real leak. This is a leak by 9550 Pro on Twitter. 9550 Pro has a pretty good track record with leak accuracy. And this one points toward an alleged Intel slide leak showing the alleged memory configuration for the Intel DG2 GPUs, not alleged because we know those exist. As a reminder, the DG2 GPUs are the desktop part coming out. It might be some on the laptop lineup, but the point is they're specifically different from the DG1 that we looked at previously, which was a low-end card, almost like a throwaway card by Intel that ended up in some OEM and SI systems. Really interesting from sort of a technology standpoint, but not particularly interesting from a product standpoint. That's different. That's DG1. DG2 is coming out, and a quick disclaimer, we're not sure if this slide is real yet. It doesn't seem very Intel-like to refer to memory devices as, quote, VRAMs, rather than just VRAM or memory modules. So the quality of the information is a bit suspect right now. Then again, if it's an internal only engineering slide, typos are more likely because it's not going through all the PR and marketing layers it normally would. The slide suggests SKU1 as a 512 EU or execution unit model. This has been leaked several times at this point, so that's consistent. It suggests that SKU1 will be with 8 memory modules at 16 gigabytes total, so that would be a capacity of 2 gigabytes each. The 16 gigabit per second data rate is competitive with current lower end or mid-range models, although the usefulness of the data rate is also contingent on the memory controller and the memory subsystem. SKU2 presents at 384 EUs, also previously leaked, and 6 memory modules. That's the new info, or 12 gigabytes of VRAM. SKU3 claims 256 EUs and 8 gigabytes, and then it goes down from there to 4 gigabytes with 2 additional SKUs. Now, Intel it's sort of new to GPUs, but not really. It's got the IGPs, obviously, but doesn't have anywhere near the experience of NVIDIA or AMD. One of the big things that NVIDIA and AMD both do, and NVIDIA brands it this way specifically, is tune the memory subsystem so that there's, for example, with NVIDIA, there's delta color compression that's gotten really advanced over the years, where instead of sort of storing the color of every pixel on the screen, it's able to take deltas from several pixels apart to then calculate or extrapolate the correct value rather than storing it all. It can do some calculation on the fly. This helps a lot with memory capacity and bandwidth, but the extent to which Intel has advanced its own processes here, we're obviously not sure. We won't know till it's out. It might be something they talk about, but the point is that the bandwidth, the memory speed, the memory capacity, all of these things matter, but the extent to which they matter will depend a lot on the technology that is driving the use of those interfaces or protocols or capacities. So we'll see how Intel does here. Intel is definitely an engineering company, but it's also new to this space. Up next, EVGA's own resident overclocker, Vince Lucido, also known as Kingpin, famous perhaps on our channel for his overclocked e-bikes that I was terrified to ride, at least one of them when we were in Taiwan last. He has offered a teaser via Facebook of his new namesake well, technically it doesn't say RTX 3090 Ti, but let's be real. NVIDIA's announced it at this point. We know that's what it is. So it's probably an RTX 3090 Ti Kingpin edition card. This is a follow-up to the existing RTX 3090 line. Those are probably EOL or will be soon at this point to make way for this one. The images posted by Vince don't offer a whole lot in the way of actual specifications for the upcoming cards. but it does highlight the two-tone color scheme. We can also see the, at this point, standard black and gold PCB. Actually, there's one right there. In addition to that, it still has the same 360mm CLC on it that is on the 3090 KP cards. We were able to confirm this much. It is the same liquid cooler, or AIO, that's found on the previous one. It's an Asetek made AIO. The cold plate should be about the same, where it's got the protrusion of copper to come down and meet flush with the relatively flat silicon of a GPU. This we weren't able to directly confirm, but the current rumor is that it's going to have two 12-pin connectors that you'll feed the 8 pins into. That could be as much as 4 8-pins feeding into the two 12 pins. We're not sure on that right now. It does seem likely it would be two 12 pins rather than the triple 8-pin solution normally used, just because of what NVIDIA has been working on, but we'll see for that. Either way, there's a new KP card coming out. While we're on the topic of EVGA news, another one, the EVGA limited edition E1 gaming PC, or as we're calling it, at least it's not an ASRock NFT edition. This is an EVGA pre-built. There's only one version of this specific pre-built, so there aren't different SKUs. It's supposed to be an open air chassis. It's made from carbon fiber, apparently, to the extent that that's useful, and it's just basically marketing, and it'll be really light, but open air chassis design. There's some additional detail that's worth noting. So the E1 uses an independent cable suspension system that'll suspend a central plate that houses all of the components. That'd be like the motherboard and the power supply, so that's kind of interesting. Speaking of the PSU, the E1 will use a limited edition 1600 watt titanium rated power supply that will also feature a carbon fiber finish to match the rest of the E1 aesthetic. That's the part that's different. The power supply should probably be the same as the other 1600 watt T2s. The E1 will be built with the EVGA Z690 Dark Kingpin motherboard and what appears to be that 3090 Ti KP graphics card we just mentioned. And routing out the notables, there's also analog gauges for CPU and GPU temperature, and the EVGA's 7th gen AIO CPU cooler, which is new. We did contact EVGA to ask about this one. At present, there's no pricing, there's no ETA. That's going to hinge partly on the 3090 Ti launch, which is NVIDIA's thing anyway. And we also don't know how many units they're going to make, but it's easily going to be over $5,000 for sure if you look at those components. Well over. So we're curious to see what happens. I'm kind of curious to look at just the case. I don't know. I guess do this for us. If you're interested in just a review of the case, like not the whole, we could do the whole thing. If you want to see a pre-built review of this, we could do that. I need to see a good amount of comments to justify buying it. But if you're interested in the case, though, I can probably ask them to just send us a case without anything else, and we could do a full review on it. But let us know in the comments, because I'm not sure how interested people will be since it's limited, so you're not likely to get it, but maybe it's interesting from the standpoint of doing something different with the suspension system. Anyway, let us know what you think. Valve confirms the first wave of Steam Deck shipments for customers by February 28th, and also we have one. We've been working on one secretly for a little bit. We can't say much more right now, but we're going to have a hardware level review. Only a couple of outlets have one as far as we're aware right now. And we have spent so far basically round the clock hours on it between a couple of people working on the Steam Deck. So there's going to be a lot of detail in our hardware review, probably more than you'll see elsewhere. I think it's fair to expect from us. So definitely check back for that. Not sure exactly if we can give the date, but you'll see it pop up soon. Anyway, after delays to the original Steam Deck launch date, which was last year, Valve had previously stated that the Steam Deck handhelds would ship within the January to February 2022 window. As we approach February, Valve has now officially offered some guidance on its highly anticipated handheld gaming PC. According to Valve, the first batch of Steam Decks will ship to the first wave of pre-order customers on February 28th. That is for those who were lucky enough to be featured among the first to pay the $5 pre-order prepayment back in July of last year. Additionally, Valve stated that the remaining Steam Deck pre-order customers will receive an email notification alerting them to pay for the remainder of their Steam Deck configuration. That will range from $400 to $650 USD, and you'll have 72 hours to do it. Otherwise, the Steam Deck units that were reserved will be released to others in the queue. Valve also confirmed that it's working to send out review units to press, and it said that there's a February 25th embargo date for that coverage. We have a different embargo date for the hardware review. We probably won't be talking much about software in that one, but we will be focusing very hard on the hardware, so it'll be, I'm not going to spoil what we're doing, I guess, and give it away for other people to copy, but we're going to have a lot of stuff in it, so check back for that. It'll be in the next couple weeks, I think. All right, Crysis 4 confirmed. as in early development. At long last, Crytek has confirmed that the next game in the Crysis franchise, tentatively titled Crysis 4, is in active development, albeit in the early stages. So, probably some point this decade, you'll be able to, in fact, ask the perennial question once more with renewed relevance. Right now, Crytek says the game is in early stages of development, so it'll be a while yet. But we wanted to bring you the news at this time as we are so hyped for the future, and to let you know that we will be listening to our community. The official announcement of Crysis 4 comes hot on the heels of the news leaking on Chinese social media site Bilibili, which was then picked up by the press. Regarding the title, the YouTube teaser video refers to the game as the, quote, fourth installment in the Crysis franchise, stopping short of calling it Crysis 4, and following up on Crytek's claims in whenever it was, that they would not be calling it Crysis 4. Actually, I think that was in 2012 they said that. It's been a while. And actually, there hasn't been a proper Crysis game since about 2012 anyway. So this will be the next one, other than all of the rehashes they've done in the past few years. Intel issues a warning regarding non-K CPU overclocking. In other words, oops, you weren't supposed to be able to do that. Put that back. Don't do that. If you hadn't heard, Intel's K SKUs are supposed to be the only ones you can CPU overclock. That's not the case right now. You can overclock other ones with external generators on the motherboards. And this is something that's happened in the past, but it's been a little while. So kind of a fun news story to revive this topic. So there have been substantial overclocks the last week or so on non-K CPUs. Der Bauer posted one on his channel. You should check it out. He's awesome, does good coverage. And then additionally, High Cookie has posted one. Intel told Tom's Hardware in a statement, though, that it doesn't like the idea of overclocking things that it didn't think you could. Quote, Intel's 12th gen non-K processors were not designed for overclocking. Intel does not warranty the operation of processors beyond their specifications. By the way, just to interrupt this, extremely clever weasel wording there by Intel. Intel does not warranty the operation of processors beyond their specifications. Not non-K processors, just processors, which is true. If you break your K CPU or your non-K CPU overclocking, like with liquid nitrogen, they're not going to cover it under the warranty. There used to be a special warranty for that, which is stupid anyway, but so this is weasel wording. They're trying to scare you out of overclocking your non-K CPU by saying they won't cover it under warranty, but they also won't help you with the K-SKU CPU. The fallback here is that they're saying non-K CPUs aren't designed or tested for it, which we believe, but the extent to which that actually matters is maybe questionable for basic overclocks, especially non-extreme overclocks. And also, to be fair, good luck to Intel trying to prove that the CPU is dead from overclocking. If you don't tell them, they don't really have a way to know. We're not saying that's what you should do, like genuinely. You probably, if you break it on, you should just buy a new one. That's what I would just, okay, oops, I messed that up, and then buy a new one. But they also have no way to tell, so it's kind of silly to threaten that particular aspect of the warranty. Anyway, the rest of the statement says, altering frequency or voltage may damage or reduce the useful life of the processor and other system components, and may reduce system stability and performance. So the statement follows the discovery of the workaround on certain Z690 motherboards anyway that expose B-clock overclocking options for otherwise locked CPUs. Most of the time, the B-clock is explicitly tied to and drives other parts of the board, like the PCIe bus speed, memory, and storage subsystems. However, some Z690 boards have an external B-clock generator that's decoupled from the rest of the system, and that avoids the instability and volatility of B-clock overclocking in general. So, esteemed overclocker Der Bauer overclocked the 6-core i5-12400 to an all-core 5.2 gigahertz. Maybe separately impressive is High Cookie taking the Pentium Gold G7400T to 5.8 gigahertz, although that was accomplished with liquid nitrogen. And the same scenario played out a few years ago when motherboard makers exposed B-clock overclocking support on Z170 boards for Intel's Skylake CPUs, the locked ones. Now, last time, Intel shut that down. So as BIOS updates rolled out or new boards came out, that feature just vanished quietly. Intel stopped short of saying it would shut it down this time. The past does sort of indicate that might happen. So if you want to do that, if you're interested in the fun aspect of overclocking Pentiums and non-K CPUs, probably get a board early that can do it and save the BIOSes that are out there now, as long as they're still out there, that support it, because you're going to need those if they ever go away. Another option would be to shut it down via microcode, and that would be applied through a BIOS update. So as long as you don't update your BIOS, as long as you're on a CPU that was manufactured before Intel cared about this, then you'll have that functionality. Up next, NVIDIA is apparently ready to scrap its $40 billion deal for the purchase of ARM because it didn't get what it wanted fast enough, and it's becoming impatient and starting to kick and scream on the floor. According to a report from Bloomberg, it seems NVIDIA could be preparing to walk away from its proposed ARM buyout. NVIDIA announced its intent to buy ARM from SoftBank, which owns it now, back in September of 2020. And even then, NVIDIA outlined an 18-month timeline for getting the deal approved, implying that the company understood that the deal would face no shortage of scrutiny from global regulators. As we approach that 18-month mark, which would be March of 2022, it's fair to say that the NVIDIA ARM deal has likely attracted far more attention than either party anticipated, despite the way NVIDIA and ARM have continued to frame the deal as necessary and one that's good for the industry. Consolidation of global market powers is always a good thing for consumers. From the onset, many consumers, competitors, and lawmakers the world over have feared it would give NVIDIA an unfair amount of leverage and a whole lot more room to act in a domineering fashion. Per Bloomberg's report here, NVIDIA is quietly telling its partners that it doesn't expect the deal to be approved. Meanwhile, ARM is allegedly, SoftBank at least via ARM, is allegedly looking at taking the company public with an IPO, which would indicate that its confidence in the deal going through is wavering. If the deal does fall through, NVIDIA would lose the $1.25 billion deposit that it prepared for SoftBank ahead of the deal. But, you know, that's just pennies. NVIDIA has insane amounts of money right now. It's crazy. In terms of issues they run into, most recently the FTC officially sued to block the transaction last month. The UK government is still probing the deal on grounds of antitrust and national security. And NVIDIA and ARM haven't even begun in China yet, where it's widely expected, and we would expect that too, that the deal would be rejected. PCIe Gen 5 SSDs up next. These are the first of their kind. TeamGroup has announced not only the company's first PCIe Gen 5 SSD, but the industry's first PCIe Gen 5 SSD for client machines. These will be the TeamGroup T-Force Cardea PCIe Gen 5 SSDs. They are PCIe 5.0 by 4 M.2 drives, and while TeamGroup didn't disclose all the details, we do know that the new SSD is NVMe 2.0 compliant and will ship with 2 different heatsinks. There will be a raised aluminum heatsink meant for desktop users, while a smaller graphene heatsink is aimed at laptop users. Additionally, TeamGroup is citing maximum sequential read speeds of over 13 gigabytes per second and write speeds of up to 12 gigabytes per second. The new drives will also be offered in capacities up to 4 terabytes. TeamGroup didn't share any details on the type of flash being used, though, or what the controller is. Team says it's aiming for Q3 of this year for this drive to be publicly available. And at that point, that would mean it would probably align with the AMD AM5 platforms as well, which will also have PCIe Gen 5. So you'll have the option of Intel Alder Lake platforms or whatever might come out between now and then, and AM5 platforms. Up next, some overclocking news, again, but this time with G.Skill and memory. There's a new DDR5 overclocking record, and it's DDR5 8888 for the record. And that's done on DDR5 6400 CL32 kits as they are stock. So G.Skill found itself in the news for this. The company announced that between itself and Asus and some talented in-house overclockers, and specifically the overclock that got the record was done by Lupin_no_Musume. Sorry, let us know how to say that. Using G.Skill's Trident Z5 DDR5 memory. An Asus ROG Z690 board was used as well, the Apex, and an Intel 12900K. The record frequency was 8888 with timings of CL 88888888. They really like that number there. And it takes the crown from the previous record of DDR5 8704, which sounds a lot less cool than the number 88 repeated 7 times. The overclock was validated by CPU-Z, and it was done with liquid nitrogen. And a couple notes here too. Overclocking memory like this requires not only good memory, but a good memory bin on that memory, and then additionally a good IMC bin on your CPU. So your really high overclocking core might not mean it has a good IMC. You need a good integrated memory controller on the CPU as well, and then a motherboard that can do it well too, like the Apex or some of the ITX boards do well with this. G.Skill also announced some new memory kits alongside this news. It specifically announced the Z5 DDR5 6400 kits. These are CL3239, 39102, which are some of the tighter timings we've seen for DDR5 this time. Remember that the timings are a lot higher in scale and numbers than DDR4, so get used to that. The memory kits will use a voltage of 1.4 volts and will be offered in 32 gigabyte or 2x16 kits. G.Skill didn't disclose pricing. It'll be high though. DDR5 kits are available immediately via its retail and distribution partners, although those have been scalped a lot lately. Finally, a really quick one. Intel is nothing if not persistent. Some of you might remember that back in the late 2000s, about 2008 or 9, Intel lost a case and was ordered to pay $1.2 billion in fines and payouts to AMD and other parties because of some antitrust issues, where actually one of the greatest quotes of all time in the PC industry, maybe ever, came out of it, which is when Intel was quoted as saying, "Dell is the greatest friend or the best friend that money can buy." That's right. It's not better than Dell if you can pay them to do stuff. So the allegation at the time was that Intel was paying large OEMs, including Dell, HP, and Lenovo, to use Intel chips in 95% of their machines and block the sale of AMD chips through backdoor deals. Intel initially lost the case, but it's now spent the last 10 years or a little more fighting it and appealing it in court in the EU. Nothing like the court systems and how they get jammed up. And the Luxembourg-based General Court, which is Europe's second highest court, is the one that annulled the fine. Quote, "The European Commission's analysis is incomplete and does not make it possible to establish the requisite legal standards that the rebates at issue were capable of having or likely to have anti-competitive effects," judges said in a statement. At the moment, it appears like Intel won, at least for now, but the European Commission stated that it would reflect on its next steps. So they're not through the woods yet, but the $1.2 billion fine that they've managed to avoid paying, as we understand it, still sort of hangs in the air as maybe an option for the case that's been appealed for so long now. That's it for hardware news this week. Thanks for watching. As always, subscribe for more. You can go to store.gamersnexus.net to grab one of our mod mats or toolkits or our mouse mats and other items, or you can go to patreon.com/gamersnexus to help us out directly there and get behind the scenes videos. We have some new ones coming up the next few days, so check those out on Patreon. Thank you for watching. We'll see you all next time.